It's in process right now.
Uh-huh.
And just got it recording. She does put this out on her YouTube channel as well, right, Ange?
I do.
So if you guys want to watch past ones, if you need to rewatch this, you can do that. And Angie, if you want to is it just your name or?
Let me pull it up here. AG Coaching. So my initials in coaching.
AG Coaching on YouTube.
Yep.
All right. So you guys can get started. I'm live streaming. It should happen here any second. It's just processing.
Well, yeah, and I will mention why we have just a couple minutes before live streaming. I'm starting this week my Go Get Your Goals. I just had it on my heart the last week or two to do a fall reset, a lots reset in my life. And there's still time to get our goals. So my intention is to show up every week. The kickoff calls this Thursday, and then it's going to be Tuesdays at noon Central Standard Time. Call. It's a webinar format on Zoom. I'm not charging for it. It's going to kind of be like, you know what? Pay what you want, when you want, if you want, but everyone's welcome. And so I'm really excited about that.
Awesome. Yeah. If you can put any information in the chat about that while Nikki's talking, that'd be great. I'll copy and paste it in the live stream as well.
Lovely. Thank you.
Awesome. So it's this for those of you that are new to this call, which a few of you are. Nice to see you guys. We have Nikki from Kevnick Mortgage coming on. She comes on every Monday. We have a 20-minute call in and out. What's going on in the mortgage world? What should we be talking to our sphere of influence, our social media following, our clients, our prospects about? What should we be looking forward to? And if you want to use it as accountability, you can also chat in the chat box what you're working on this week. If you come back every week, Angie and I are here to help kind of hold you, just have an accountability group so you can show up and know that you're going to be asked if you did what you said you were going to do. So plenty of time to ask questions of Angie, myself, or of Nikki at the end. So Nikki, we're going to go ahead and let you talk about what we should be looking forward to, what we should be talking to people about at the start of this week.
Absolutely. So happy Fed week, everyone. Like I said, I rarely say that, but this is actually a really important week, as we know, as we anticipate the Fed meeting that starts on Tuesday and goes into Wednesday. What is the Fed going to be doing with their interest rate? As a reminder, the Fed rate is not directly related to mortgage interest rates. Mortgage interest rates are based on the 10-year Treasury bond, but the movement of that rate up and down affects the 10-year Treasury bond, which in turn affects mortgage interest rates. So when we were heading into the weekend on Friday morning, there was a 15% chance that the Fed was going to cut the interest rate by 50 basis points or 0.5% versus 25 basis points or 0.25%. Everyone was kind of on the fence hoping for that 50 basis point cut, but really the chances were looking really slim that that was actually going to happen. When all of a sudden, Nick Tumeros, who is a writer for the Wall Street Journal, he is considered to be kind of the authority on, Fed meetings and kind of has some insider information on what the Fed is going to do. And a lot of times what the Fed members will do is release some information to him so that the market doesn't get shocked when there's big changes happening. Well, he released an article on Friday afternoon that made a case for a 25 basis point cut and also made a case for a 50 basis point cut. But at the end of the article, he said basically that there was a solid reason why the Fed would want to cut interest rates by 50 basis points. Market went crazy. Now there's a 65% chance that the Fed will be cutting interest rates by 50 basis points or 0.5%. What this means. So the 25 basis point cut that we are all expecting has already kind of been baked into the market. And the idea that interest rates have been slowly coming down since the last Fed meeting to make way for that 25 basis point cut. So it's not like on Wednesday, we're going to get this announcement if they cut 25 basis points and rates are just going to go boom and drop to the floor. It started to happen already. As the market prepares for a perhaps 50 basis point cut, again, we're going to start to see that decline. And then on Wednesday, if it does go 50 basis points, we'll see a more aggressive decline in interest rates. So be prepared for things like that. The one thing that I wanted to mention is we don't know what's going to happen. Of course, we'll be keeping up on it and giving, information, and I'll be releasing TikToks and social media, et cetera, surrounding the rate cut. But the one thing that I did want to talk about today is why this interest rate cut matters to you. Now, it's not just because, hey, it's lower interest rates and everybody's mortgage all of a sudden becomes more affordable. It has a lot to do with buyer motivation, seller motivation, and when is the right time for a seller with a 2.5% or 3% interest rate on their current home. What point in that interest rate market is going to get them ready to move? And basically what the experts tell us and what the history has told us is that if we can get that mortgage interest rate to 5.5 or lower, that tends to be the general psychological okay point where sellers are going, okay, I have a 2.5% or I have a 3% interest rate on my home right now. I'm okay going to a 5.5% as long as I get the home that I want. I have some equity in my current home that I can give to the new home and kind of not have to go so far up in payment. You can understand where in the last 2 years, if somebody has a 2 to 3% interest rate on their mortgage, they're less likely to move for a 7% interest rate unless they really have to, unless they're really forced to. So it's one of those things where as we see these interest rates start to decline and get down to that 5.5% mark, it's very realistic that more homes should be able to come onto the market because the motivation to move will be not hindered as much by that mortgage interest rate and the comparative interest rate between what they're selling and what they're buying. So just something to keep in mind that as we see those things go down, you can kind of talk to clients who perhaps have been in their home for, 5 to 7 years and, may be ready for a move and kind of get those trigger points out there and kind of talk to people about that. Another couple of tips I wanted to talk about today. When you have a seller that is at a 2% or a 3% interest rate, the question that I get all the time from clients, hey, we're looking to sell our house. Is our mortgage assumable? That's a very important question for you guys to answer, obviously, when you're going to listing appointments or talking about listing somebody's house, because I guarantee you, if they're ready to move, they're going to get that question. And here's a general rule of thumb. If they have a VA loan or an FHA loan on their existing property, those are going to be assumable mortgages. That means that the new buyer can take over that mortgage at the current balance and interest rate. And then if they have to be able to close the gap between that loan and the purchase price. So in other words, if you have a client who has a $300,000 mortgage balance at 3% and you are selling the home for $500,000, the buyer of that home can take over the $300,000 portion of that mortgage and then has to close that $200,000 gap. They can close that by doing a second mortgage, or they can close that by having cash. So just some things to think about. If you have a VA or an FHA mortgage, those are assumable. 99.9% of the time, if it's a conventional mortgage, it is not assumable. There's very rare occasions where that conventional mortgage can be assumable, but those are very few and far between and are extremely lender dependent and servicer dependent. So I haven't honestly seen a conventional mortgage that is assumable. And I've been doing this for quite some time. So I'm not saying it can't happen or won't happen, but on the conventional side, it's very unlikely that that mortgage is assumable. So just know that when you're talking to people about listing their houses, that's going to be a thing. The other big thing with all the NAR changes, and I know I keep bringing this up, we have ran into it several times now. The buyer broker agreement about commissions, we need that. We need to see it. We need to know what's on it. We need to understand from the purchase agreement whether the seller's paying, whether they're not paying, and we cannot have it be a last minute issue. The reason for that is we always, obviously in the mortgage process, part of what you do is verify that the client has enough cash to close, enough down payment, closing costs, things like that. We are getting into situations where we have buyer broker agreements. We are under the understanding that the seller's paying. There's a gap, $2,500, $3,000, things of that nature that the buyer's agent is expecting to be paid per the buyer broker agreement, but the seller is only willing to pay so much. So technically that buyer has to come up with that gap. Then it's the conversation with the agent and saying, oh, did you talk to your buyers about covering this gap? And the answer that I've gotten most of the time now is, nope, I haven't talked to them yet. That puts us in a position to have that cash to close conversation. And that's really not our conversation to have, because it's really not on us to discuss the terms of your guys' agreements with the buyers. So something to be watching out for as you consider where you're signing these agreements. Please send it to your lender. Please send it to your title company and lay it out for us like we're 3 years old. Sellers paying this much, buyers paying this much, conversation has been had. Things like that. Those are just important conversations. I've had to have agents who haven't had those conversations. They have had to have the conversations with their buyers and ultimately ended up giving up that portion of their commission because the buyers were basically blindsided or didn't understand what was happening. I also have had clients, have a client who was offering on a almost $2 million property this weekend, sign a buyer rep agreement and didn't understand that by doing so, he was responsible for paying the agent's commission for that $2 million purchase, which is 2%. So you can imagine his hesitation to continue on with the buying process, given the information. Luckily, in his case, the seller said, no, it's been my intention to pay for it, so you don't have to worry about it. But in that case, just please make sure you're having clear conversations, because our conversations with those buyers can only go so far in the idea, do you have enough money to close? And we can't have conversations about, talk to your agent about who's going to cover what or whatever that case is. It's more on us to say, do they have enough money for closing? So just some things that we're going to run into in the next, couple months as these changes get ironed out. But the market's going to start moving, the listings are going to start coming, the homes are going to start coming for sale, the interest rates are going to go down. So just better off to be transparent and have all of those conversations up front. And again, send us what we need. We ask for it, but that doesn't necessarily mean we understand the terms for each individual property. So any questions on any of that?
Well, I have two things I want to circle back around to real quick. So going back to the assumable loan, is there a process us as agents either in preparation for to really know about that loan? Should we be asking specific questions, or how do we go about either if we find out at the listing appointment, or is that something we should get information we should get before and then call? Or can you talk a little bit about what that process looks like as an agent?
Yeah, absolutely. So all you really need to know from the client is what type of mortgage they have on their home. If they're unsure, they can call their current servicer, or they can look on their mortgage statement. A lot of times it'll tell you whether it's conventional, FHA, a lot of, or of course, I as a lender could tell whether or not it's FHA or conventional.
Yep.
But there are certain lookup tools that tell us whether the loan is a Fannie or a Freddie loan, or whether, there isn't a lookup tool for FHA, but it'll tell us kind of like what type of loan that person has. If they're unsure, have them call their servicer. It's a quick phone call. You can do it, you can talk about it at the listing appointment and just say, hey, here's the thoughts on assumability. This is a question that I get asked all the time when I'm on listing appointments. There's not a huge need to get it beforehand, unless you want to say, okay, as part of this listing, in the wording and the information, we're going to talk about the assumable nature of that mortgage to make it more attractive to buyers.
Okay. So we can just truly assume 100% that if it's VA or FHA, it is assumable. There's no other, okay.
Correct. And by assumable, that buyer of that property still has to qualify traditionally for that assumable loan. So keep that in mind. It isn't just a handover, like, here you go, here's a loan that's existing, start paying it. They have to qualify on their own for that assumability.
Perfect. Okay. And then the second one, and I want to leave enough time for other people's questions as well.
Angie, can I interrupt real quick?
Please.
I just want to comment on that assumability. Just to clarify, the buyer has to be approved through that current servicer, right? So and I will tell you from experience on a couple that I have looked into on listing, that it is nearly impossible sometimes to get any response from some of these servicers. So be prepared that you may or may not get a response from them, and you need to understand what their process is, and also expect that it is going to take longer and sometimes significantly longer to get this pushed through compared to a regular financed, loan.
Great comments. Yes, absolutely. You do have to qualify with the current servicer for that same mortgage. It does take, I've seen it take 60 to 90 days, just because their priority is not to take existing loans and resend them to another buyer. Their priority is, as a servicer, is to acquire more servicing. So it isn't something that I will say, gets at the bottom of the pile, but it's certainly something that they take their time on, as far as, pushing it through, getting that buyer qualified, etc. That is very true.
Great, that's really helpful. Thanks, Chrissy. The other thing too, real quick, I just want to put out there, because I don't know why I was having this reaction, but like my heart started like pounding a little bit when you were talking about that agents still do not understand the broker buyer agreement. And Cari, you can chime in here again. I want to be respectful and leave time for questions. If there is anyone on this call that has not got the proper training that, you know, Cari has been putting out, that we have here in recordings, in YouTube videos, to exacerbated length. I mean, this is just something that we need to understand. Please, please, please reach out to me or Cari. This is so important. It just is so important. And yeah, we need to all be level up and really be ready to have these conversations, because again, if we don't get this right, the buyer is the one that suffers in the end. And there's a lot of people's times and energies and efforts that could have been wasted. So just, it's okay if you don't, if you're listening to this call, that's fine, but let's get you up to speed. So please, that's just, I just had to put that out there, because I was just like, oh, it's still, yeah, and it's happening.
And it's in an effort to say that it's new, something new that everybody's navigating. So nobody's going to be 100% on how this is going to go down. And we all had questions on how's the market going to react to this, and what's going to happen, and is it really going to change things? But from a lending perspective, think of that buyer broker agreement now as an essential part of that purchase agreement, and give the title company and the lender clear direction on, this is what I'm expecting, this is what the buyer is expecting, you know, and outline it for us, because your conversations are different. The language is, you know, can be different on each contract. It's just, we need a clear direction on our side of what money is going where, because it's going to start to affect our ability to lend. Keep in mind though, any commissions that are paid to the agent by the buyer cannot use down payment assistance to do so. Okay. If that makes sense. You can use seller paid closing costs. You cannot use down payment assistance. Yeah. Just an FYI.
Yep. And also know this is a moving target. So that's another reason why
it is
so important. Being in any trainings that your brokerage is offering, if they're not following NAR, if they're not asking Cari and I mean, this is just really important, because even a call that I was on back in July, before all this came into place, this is truly going to be a moving target, where we still don't even know some of the scenarios that are coming out that we're going to have to play out and very quickly pivot. So it's very important to stay engaged. Absolutely. Any other questions?
Not a question, but I will say too, on this whole buyer broker agreement, yes, title company is now asking for these documents as well. And for us, they're asking, like for EXP, how we have that direct seller to broker, whatever form. They want that, even if it's zero, they want as much documentation as possible. So, yeah, just have that heads up.
Yeah, lenders are needing the copies. Title companies, attorneys are needing the copies. Why? Because this is the new rule, if not law, in your state. And so they need to be compliant. And if they're not asking for it, you know, that can be a problem for them as well. And so, yeah, if you're behind on it, reach out to Angie or I. We have so many tools and resources available. EXP has forms. We have our own forms. We've got literally toolkits full of just robust information. If you don't know how to talk about it, you know, get into those meetings, watch those. But really, what I heard today is, you know, you go into a listing appointment, you need to be armed with all the information. You need to be confident to know how to talk about how the NAR settlement affects them as sellers. And when you go in and ask about their mortgage and see if it's assumable, you're probably doing something that 90% of the agents aren't doing. Anything that you go above and beyond and do is going to set you apart from the competition and help you get that listing. So whether or not they have an assumable mortgage or not, just by asking the question shows that you're looking at all options to help them sell their home in the highest, you know, and best possible way for the highest amount of money. And so they may say, oh no, I have a conventional mortgage, no problem. But the fact that you asked that question and somebody else didn't, honestly makes a huge difference. And so, but you are going to find a lot of people who have VA and FHA loans. And so there are some opportunities. I'm excited to watch, what happens with just consumer confidence after some more interest rate dropping. You guys should be looking at what are the interest rates today every day, because they have been going down. And if you're not telling your clients about it, you're doing a disservice. Many of them might not know. They might be sitting on the fence, not realizing that interest rates are going down. The world will probably know after Wednesday, because there'll be a lot of media about what happens. But to Nikki's point, it's going to continue to drop. We heard that early in the year when we went to a couple of builder association events that they had chief economists coming to. They all said at the end of this year, interest rates would go down and they would probably continue to fall throughout the beginning of 2025. I heard a different lender the other day say this is going to be the winter of the first-time home buyer, because right now, if interest rates go down and there isn't as much competition quite yet because we're in the winter market, or if prices haven't had the chance to go back up, because they probably will if there's a lot of competition, this could be the unique opportunity of a few months where a first-time home buyer could actually not be priced out and take advantage of lower interest rates. So are you talking to every potential prospect that you've talked to in the last year or two that was a first-time home buyer, and ask them if they've purchased, and if they haven't, why you should get on a phone call or a Zoom call or an in-person meeting with them? I would if I were you. You have tons of reasons to reach out to them, and start posting on social media. Have you thought about buying your first home, but you were priced out during COVID and then interest rates went up? Well, we have a unique opportunity over the course of the next few months that I want to talk to you about. So please give me a call. I mean, these are direct calls to action on your social media. You don't even know who knows other people that have been trying to buy a home as a first-time home buyer in your database of your social media. So the call to action today, if I were you, if I were an agent that was looking for clients, I would be doing a video and or a post about that topic right now and asking your friends to enlist their help in finding people who had been priced out of the market as first-time home buyers before, because you have an opportunity to potentially help them. Enlist people to go look for referrals for you, and be very direct in this call to action, and see how many appointments that you can set. Because I know that everybody has friends in their database right now, which is their social media database, that knows somebody who probably wanted to buy a home and just felt like that ship had sailed and it may not for them. And then you have to be able to have a trusted lender that you can send them to immediately, look at their options, and start getting ahead of the game, because as these start to drop a little bit, their buying power is going up and the competition might not be as fierce immediately. But the second the news is out that interest rates go way down, more and more first-time buyers or buyers in general are going to come out. And then what's going to happen is you're going to have multiple offers again, and it's going to drive prices up. And then your buyers are going to be in the exact same position they were in 2020, 21, 22. So you get my point. That's what I would do today. Our call on Mondays is to get you guys thinking differently, get some information, and then have something that you can go share in your database, in your social media, with your prospects, with your leads, with your clients. And so I think that's a great message for today. Nikki, do you have anything else that you would add to that?
Nope, I couldn't agree more. It's all about, making sure you keep in contact with those prospects. I mean, they wanted to buy it at some point for a reason. And I agree that 90-day window from here until the end of the year is going to be absolutely essential for anyone who's looking to get into the market and buy something at the price that it's at now, and still take advantage of that lower interest rate.
100%.
And what is the interest rates?
So today we are into the high 5s to low 6s, depending on qualifying. So I just actually locked somebody on Friday at 5.625. So we're getting there.
Yes, we are.
And a good indication of this, FYI, is the interest rates for down payment assistance are actually starting to go down each week now, which is a huge indicator that mortgage interest rates in general are going to continue to get better.
Any other questions before we wrap up? Good. Well, you have Nikki's information, you have mine. Reach out. We're here and happy to help in any way. I can't wait to see what I'll be following you this week, Nikki, on all social media platforms as
Absolutely.
we go through the week. So thank you.
Absolutely. You guys have a good
Thanks,
week.
everybody.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.